Picasso was world-renowned as an art genius, but why Picasso died like a Spaniard? Let's clarify some key factors to understand the Spanishness of Picasso. "I want to die a Spaniard," claimed Pablo Picasso on numerous occasions during his life in France. And as a matter of fact, he did die like a Spaniard and never came back to Spain due to political reasons. The Spanishness of Picasso is undeniable, and it is reflected in numerous aspects of his life and art. Picasso paints El Guernica, tribute to the Spanish people. Picasso was moved by the suffering they felt after a military attack by the Germans in 1937. Picasso accepted the commission of the Spanish government to paint a painting for the exhibition of the Spanish Pavilion in the International Exposition of Paris in 1937. It is quite amazing that only took Picasso less than 2 months to paint El Guernica. Picasso used images of bulls, a mother with her dead son, to denounce the horrors of the war. In 1939, the painting was put on display in the Modern Art Museum of New York City. Picasso had promised the Spanish people that El Guernica will be returned one day. In 1970, in a letter to the museum, he demanded that, once the democracy is restored in Spain, El Guernica should be back there. Before his death, Picasso directed his lawyer to make this happen because his wish was always to see this painting returned to the Spanish people. In 1981, 9 years after his death, Picasso's promise was fulfilled, and the painting was sent back to Spain. Picasso was very generous and donated funds to the Spanish refugees and later to the Varsovia Hospital, founded in 1944 to take care of the refugees from the Civil War. Almost 500,000 Spaniards, defeated Republicans, crossed the French border looking for shelter. Pablo Picasso directly helped many Spaniards to obtain passports or to liberate them from prison. It is indisputable that Picasso supported the Spanish Republic and not the French Popular Front, though the Spanish Republicans were somewhat politically aligned with them. The refugees who came were not welcome in France. Spaniards fleeing there during this time were badly treated. In 1938, a decree issued from the French government put many Spanish refugees into camps called concentration camps, and they were treated as undesirables. Perhaps Picasso, being a Spaniard, will not forget this act for many years to come. Picasso leaves Paris and moves to the south of France to be closer to Spain, where he builds a little world surrounded by Spanish friends. He found in the south the tranquility that he needed and met Eugenio Arias, a Spanish exile who owned a hair salon. Picasso was very superstitious about his hair, and he had only Eugenio cut it for more than 20 years. Up until his death, Picasso and Eugenio were inseparable friends. They shared the same bond with the remembrance of Spain. They went to many bullfights together in Nimes because they both had passion for it. Eugenio recalls that during one bullfight that a French matador was trying to get the attention of the bull, but the bull didn't move. So Picasso stood up and shouted, "Speak to him in Spanish, that bull does not speak French." Picasso enjoyed talking about Spain with Eugenio, and he always felt very comfortable in his presence. According to his biographer John Richardson, Picasso developed almost all his greatest stylistic discoveries in the south near the Mediterranean. Picasso's art has a distinctive Spanish poise. Picasso manifests a permanent loyalty to his origins, to his Spanish identity, the Spanish flag, the banderilla, the Spanish wine pitcher, the guitar. In his art, the Spanish nostalgia vibrates. Picasso paints himself as a harlequin in The Three Musicians and shows his Spanishness, choosing the colors of the Spanish flag. We need to take into account that it seems like Picasso identifies the figure of the harlequin with the artist for its capacity of transformation of reality. Even farther, the hat of the harlequin reminds us of the traditional Basque headwear. Picasso captures the presence of features typically Spanish in these still life paintings, such as specific iconographic details like the barrel of the anís el mono. However, the most relevant and transcendental theme in Spain during these times was death, and Picasso represents this symbolically and explicitly in El Guernica. Picasso's grandson assures that Picasso was a Spaniard in exile. During the inauguration of the exposition in London, Picasso Years in the Mediterranean, Bernard Ruiz Picasso attends and claims that there were plenty of people that advised his grandfather Picasso to return to Spain while Franco was still in power, but Picasso's family always opposed to it. My grandfather was a Spaniard in exile. The colors of nature in the south of France reminded him of Spain, the light, the sea. This way he could reinterpret his past art, said Bernard Ruiz Picasso. This is very relevant testimony that reveals the nostalgia that Picasso felt towards his motherland. We should insist in the importance of the Spanishness in Picasso, and we can clearly see it in his art through the artistic influences of the greatest Spanish painters, El Greco, Goya, and Velázquez. When Picasso was still a young artist, he was influenced by El Greco. Yo El Greco is the painting that reminds us of his visits to Toledo and the time in the Prados Museum. El Greco manifests in Picasso's composition through the monochrome, but mainly in the destruction of perspective. Early on, as a young artist working in Paris, Picasso was called Le Petit Goya. But as he grew older, the painter that touched his soul was Velázquez. Picasso deeply studied the art of his idol and carried out a comprehensive work, ending in the production of a series of 58 paintings reinterpreting Las Meninas of Velázquez and culminated with painting his own Meninas. The bullfighting influence in Picasso is indisputable. Picasso saw the bullfighting world as a manifestation of Spanishness. During his childhood, his father took him to see bullfights in Malaga. We can appreciate this influence after 1935, when Picasso comes back to France from Spain and he starts painting Minotauromaquia and other pieces where the Minotaur and bullfights is the center of inspiration, and we can realize the nostalgia in these paintings. The bull and the Minotaur were the alter ego of the artist. He painted them and filled them up with symbolisms. In 2003, it was revealed that Picasso actually requested French nationality in 1940, but it seems like he only did it in a fleeting moment of terror when he suspected there might be an alliance between Spain and Germany. The French made the mistake of rejecting him. They were concerned that Picasso was an anarchist and were afraid that he would donate his art to Russia instead of France. Perhaps Picasso never forgot this rejection, since later on, according to his state executor, Roland Dumas, the president of the French Republic, Georges Pompidou, wanted to award Picasso with the Légion d'honneur, the highest order of France. But Picasso rejected it because Picasso believed himself to be a Spanish national. Armand Exile laments and claims that in 1940, France lost the opportunity of having among its citizens one of the best painters of the world, maybe the best. It is important to emphasize that for many years, the French have tried to claim the figure and art of Picasso as their own. The experts state that Picasso always had a very skeptical attitude towards French art and took advantage of his status of a foreigner. Art historians, such as Jonathan Brown, break the topics about the artistic roots of Pablo Picasso, and they place him in his Spanishness. Jonathan Brown's book, Picasso and the Spanish Tradition, emerged to clarify because in the United States, until not so long ago, Picasso was classified as a French painter. Picasso saw himself as a Spaniard, and the French saw him as a foreigner, and like a foreign element to the fundamental French identity. It is indisputable that Picasso never renounced his Spanishness. Although he lived outside of Spain for many years, it did not imply that he had stopped being a Spaniard. He left as being a great Spanish artist, but his brilliance made him into one of the universal and atemporal geniuses. Picasso explained with his own words, "I do not want to be a modern, I want to be eternal."